Andrew Tate, you hear him, or at least you heard him before he got jailed from every single media platform in the world, despite being virtually banned on all of them. A man who is controversial and is always at the center of your attention and, let's be real, looks absolutely awesome on camera. Now, I must admit, I'm not his biggest fan, and originally I wanted to do a response video on the guy to point out a few things that I disagree with him. But I thought to myself that it will be much better if I were to connect Andrew Tate to a much broader social thesis, which I will do right now.
I know there's only a matter of time till I'm banned from every single social media and I don't exist anymore. It's fine, I exist in the real world, in your nightmares, like Freddy Krueger. Oh, Tate's been banned for a year and a half, I wonder what he's doing. Knock, knock, I'm coming. What color is your bagage?
In this video, I will explore our future by looking at Andrew Tate and the social trends that he encompasses in himself. You know, there's a saying called the man of the century. For the 19th century it was probably either Charles Darwin or Queen of England. The 20th century had a lot more political figures, while the 21st century so far is driven by online influencers who are able to shape how politics is ultimately performed. In the recent, 7 years or so, there were only 2 people who have reached out to young men on such a large scale. First one is Dr. Jordan Peterson, who I have criticized at least twice in a video format, and there is Andrew Tate. And if you look at the sheer numbers, Andrew Tate appears to a lot more people than Jordan Peterson ever could. Both rose to fame via proliferation of viral video clips of them talking on social issues, and whereas Jordan Peterson talked directly about politics, Andrew Tate does not. However, everything he says is political, and the audience that he amasses transforms into direct political action and a change of personal behavior or even identity. Now, the main distinction between the phenomenon of Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate is demographic. One preaches individualism and conservative values to a crowd of predominantly white men and some white women, while the other preaches patriarchy, consumerism, and how to be a gangster to a predominantly melanated audience. How do I know that? Well, by looking at the people that Tate interacts with, the people that watch him, and the people who hate him, which mostly consists of white soy, like myself.
What do you think of Andrew Tate?
No, listen, actually, controversial. He's smart, right? He's smart, he's a marketing genius.
But?
The things he says are, I guess dangerous for the young guys.
So what would you recommend the young guys?
Focus on your grind, but don't beat women, I guess.
Thus, both gentlemen come to form differing authority figures based off their core demographics. Jordan Peterson more or less represented a legacy authority figure of an established academic who became disillusioned with leftist form of progressivism and their disregard for moral truths and conservative values, while Andrew Tate formed his authority around being a top G, a person who built himself from ground zero into becoming one of the most influential people in the world through training, hustling, and doing campgirl business where he preyed on weak and lonely young men, which becomes more of a common occurrence in our internet reality. And Andrew Tate was among the first people to ever explode this niche, thus setting a trend.
If you're gonna stand around and wait for a handout, nobody's gonna ever respect you. And I think that a lot of people have forgotten about how difficult and how competitive it is as a man. We're always in constant competition with each other.
Both of these stories and public personas resonate with various and even overlapping demographics, and you can't blame people for having sympathy for Andrew Tate, not only because he's charismatic, but also because many men want to be like Andrew Tate.
So I have a lot of younger listeners who are big fans of Andrew Tate, who really enjoy Andrew Tate.
I like your Andrew Tate costume.
Don't fucking talk to me, idiot. What color is your Bugatti anyway?
Not the posh.
Money aside, when you look at the younger demographics, and men especially, they want to be a G, rise to the top of the social ladder and screw over other men. This Nietzschean will to dominate over men is best illustrated in the unequal distribution of female sexual partners that is coincided with the rise of polygamy and the fall of monogamy, and Andrew Tate became the first popular influencer to openly spread this message.
You gotta plan the night. Now the problem is this: if I go to the club, every girl in the club is on my table, and if I don't go, all the broke boys get girls. So I kind of feel like it's my duty to go and take all the from the broke boys. There's only so much happiness in the world, and I want it all.
So what would men who can't get a female partner do? Well, let me have Andrew Tate's AI explain it.
Having sex with a vagina is for absolute pussies. You know what a real man does? As a real gangsta myself, I take it in the ass. That's what real G's do with their bros. I'll tell you something. I may be known as top G in public, but here in my cell in Romania, I'm known as the bottom G. That's how we roll. I cannot think of a lower ROI activity than sticking your dick in pussy. It's a complete waste of time and energy. Just think about it for a second. Them hoes have taken literally millions of cock. It just ain't tight enough for me. But drilling a fellow G's ass, now that is completely a different story.
Funny enough, it is thanks to feminism that women's sexual bargaining power was eroded. By removing the taboo around polyamory, the door was opened for very successful men to have multiple women, just like it was so in the past, or still is in some countries whose immigrants enrich our own. And for feminists who watch my content, you have to face this. Female liberation is an unstable and unnatural social phenomenon that was culturally installed upon us and is now being eroded by stronger men that no longer wish to be limited to only one woman or even treat them as an equal partner.
I said that if a woman is going out with a man, she belongs to that man, that's his woman, so she wants to do OnlyFans, she owes him some money because she's his. Yes, that's what I said.
Well, that's crazy.
In this fundamental sense, Andrew Tate has departed from the conventional Western conception of conservatism or even a reaction to the current leftist world order, and in many regards Andrew Tate is a product of this order himself. He is racially mixed, is an immigrant to multiple countries, just like me by the way, has converted to Islam, and lives a nomadic lifestyle together with his close kinship group, which is exactly what is predicted as society becomes further enriched via diversity. Communities break apart, social trust deteriorates, and group enclaves start forming. Andrew Tate is a good living example of how in 1 or 2 generations our top 10% of the top 1% would behave like. Small circle of friends, not trusting other people, being aggressive, and wanting to have the pie all just for themselves.
I am super happy. That's why you're all sad. I took your happiness from you. I have all of it.
Yeah.
I took it. It's right here.
Space-time
right
gave
here.
it to us
Right
when we
here.
threatened space-time.
Yeah, space-time gave me your happiness. That's why you're sad. And as the war room conquers, unfortunately, as members enrich themselves, the only way that can happen is if non-members pay the price. You're either inside or outside.
If you break down his political beliefs, they sort of remind me of a typical populist / anti-establishment / conspiratorial set of beliefs that are typically carried by people who are not particularly intelligent. Now, I'm not saying Andrew or his brother are dumb, well, maybe just politically. No. Quite to the contrary, they have amassed a large empire, proven themselves to handle tough interviews, and frankly their father is the second ever ranked African American chess player in the US. As we know, intelligence is about 0.8 heritable, and his father was clearly a genius, even aside from chess. So the guy has a higher fluid intelligence than most people for certain. However, his opinions appeal to the people of lower intelligence because, as we know, extreme conservative views, conspiratorial views, anti-democratic and anti-social views all have negative relationship with intelligence. And if you take a look at the kind of demographic that watches him or believes in the things he believes in, you can't help yourself but notice a certain dynamic. For instance, the most ardent proponents of conspiracy theories don't happen to be middle-aged / old white men like Alex Jones, despite all of our media's efforts. No. If you track every conspiracy theory under the sun, ranging from 5G to whatever you believed in when you were 14 years old and didn't know much, happen to correlate with age and with those of us who happen to be melanin enhanced. As we become further enriched by diversity and blessed by the differing birth rates of different classes, these kinds of people would become the dominant majority and our society will cease to function. Even now, the percentage of people who think it is essential to live in a democracy is rapidly declining by age and gets replaced by social and economic populism that is already regarded as more important than a liberal democracy. Of course, these beliefs are held the most by those of us who are more, as they say, ethnically diverse, but even white Zoomers have dropped their levels of trust to such a degree that they themselves have lost faith in democracy. However, it's not just trust, our declining cognitive ability, which through many proxies could also be regarded as to be shaping the downfall of the liberal democracies that peaked around 20 years ago. In fact, we are predicted to reach 74 mean IQ levels by the end of the century, down from around 85, which is our current level. Support for free speech, less criminality, more rule obedience, support for free access to the market, support for abortion, less governmental intervention, opposition to dictatorship, it's all directly or indirectly associated with greater cognitive abilities. And the only reason we are stuck with the liberal democracies and haven't gone full rush mode is because our elites aren't totally uncommitted to actual liberal principles, although their handling of the political dissidents, COVID skeptics, and the so-called spreaders of misinformation certainly suggests that we are at least on our way. And I think partially the reason for this is because more and more voices from the bottom start demanding to censor and punish people, while the self-respecting liberal democratic elites at the top are just trying their best to appease their voters and perform the will of the people. And although Andrew Tate's fans are big COVID skeptics, Russia supporters, believers in conservative populism and etc., they also happen to share the unpleasant fundamental characteristic of leftists who can't wait for more censorship and punish political deviants. And whereas leftist authoritarianism, unless you're talking about tankies, is much more subtle and typically manifests itself in popular culture and institutions through a form of social pressures, self-censorship, and other forms of soft power, while the right-wing authoritarianism is much more direct. It eagers for a return for politics of strong populist leaders like Vladimir Putin, or I'm sure whatever they sincerely hoped Donald Trump would become on January 6th.
Putin's the big G.
In a viral Twitter list of the top 5 most influential men of 2022, there appeared Elon Musk, Sneeko, Ye, Andrew Tate, and his brother Tristan Tate. Right under the post, Jackson Hinkle posted a comment saying that they should have included Vladimir Putin on the list as well, given in their minds he was brave enough to start a brutal war that only the Western wealthy and highly educated countries seem to oppose.
Back where you fucking started, Wagey. Someone has to fucking flip the burgers, dumbass.
Thus, we are entering a new era of manhood culture that no longer appeals to the Western traditional virtues that were preached by people like Jordan Peterson. Rather, we are entering a culture of big ego, brute force, edgy contrarianism, and zero-sum mentality.
Nordic chicks. You know why as well? The Nordic chick's dad isn't even about it. They ain't no gangsters up there. You still like sayings from a Norwegian chick? She'll go tell her dad. What's he gonna do? Eat a herring? That's it. Oh, that's bad news. Oh. There's no gangsters in Norway. There's no gangsters up there. The only gangsters in Stockholm are Somalians. You can go up to Stockholm, you can run around Sweden and do whatever you want. You can walk into let me tell you something, you can walk into the club, get the best table, and take every single bit of pussy in the club, and not a single Swedish man's gonna say shit to you. I know, because I did it.
I remember seeing multiple videos in which Andrew Tate was compared to Tyler Durden from the Fight Club.
Imagine shooting a man with your last bullet, and he stands there, unfazed.
And and although these edits are fire, and there are some similarities between these men, such as toxic following and performing violence, but at the same time there are staunch differences. Andrew Tate is not a capitalistic critic, nor is an advocate of minimal consumption. Quite to the contrary, he is advocating hyperconsumption. He is manifesting the classic capitalistic virtue of starting from the bottom, now we're here, as he disregards the plight and living conditions of those who are below him, thus fitting perfectly with leftist caricatures of evil, greedy rich people and capitalism. However, it's not entirely capitalism which is to blame here. It's the kind of people that produce wealth and income inequalities in the first place. If you look at the Gini coefficient of income inequality, the more unequal countries are always the ones who are more diverse, less intelligent, less liberal, and even less trusting. As these four things continue to deteriorate, more people will be blaming capitalism and pressuring our elites to adopt socialism without realizing the main causes of inequality. But for now, the social market of young multiracial men has decided that Andrew Tate speaks to them much more than whatever Jordan Peterson had to offer, and even Jordan Peterson's own daughter seems to agree.
And it was interesting. It was interesting. We went like, there's a lot of controversy online. Like, oh, you guys hooked up, did that. We didn't. I was interested. He flew me over and I said yes because I'm here. I say yes to things. Like I say yes to everything, right? New experiences anyway.
Opportunity.
I say yes to opportunity. Otherwise, I don't think I'd be where I am.
Andrew Tate encompasses the social trends which will be hegemonic in 20 to 80 years from now and will shift our default understanding of human relations.
Islam very closely reflects my personal beliefs. Through my personal life, I've learned that if you don't have standards and you're not a strong person who's prepared to defend his ideas, you'll be crushed.
Yes.
And we look at most religions in the world today which are not prepared to defend their ideas. What's happened to them? They're just getting crushed. And God to me is strong. God to me is something to be feared.
Yeah.
God to me is someone that people are afraid to mock.
Yeah.
God to me is someone that you have to go out of your way to prove something to. God to me has red lines.
Yeah.
Like God to me represents the Islamic faith. The Christian God to me, I don't see God.
This is precisely the reason why Andrew Tate has converted to Islam. He clearly understands that Christianity and the West are weak, while Islam is a stronger brute force that is willing to be intolerant and is objectively on the rise. And thus it appears as a good investment to become an earlier supporter of the winning team as opposed to join it later when Islam is already the dominant religion. So Andrew Tate is a Frankenstein's monster that was created by our leftist culture of consumerism and law enforcement of conservative values. When you say all lifestyles are morally good, you are essentially saying that all lifestyles are morally good and thus providing a platform for intolerant and brute lifestyles to emerge and outcompete the weaker lifestyles which are tolerant and thus become hegemonic on the cultural market and redraw the social contract. The left has rejected and laughed at Jordan Peterson, much like the feminists have undermined the traditional Western family structure. Well, now you'll have to deal with a literal Paleolithic G who doesn't give a fuck about what you have to say or offer because he is actually busy ruining and undermining everything you've been building for the past 250 years. And honestly, good on him, because he wouldn't get popular on himself if our culture wasn't ready for it. And now it is. Just don't blame the messenger, blame the game.
And that is, ladies and gentlemen, the secret to escaping the Matrix